Are you listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other platform where you can leave a rate or review? Do you like what we're doing? If the answer to all of that is yes, please consider quickly giving us a 5-star rate. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice review, we greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, let's do this.
Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 274 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 2 of A Dance with Dragons, that's Daenerys 1.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers. Then we are going to spoil things for you. Regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right.
Are you? Are you?
So, yesterday, I needed to make a doctor's appointment.
Okay.
And so I called the doctor's office, and one of the first things that it's an automated, when you first call, you get this automated phone tree situation. And one of the first things that said is, if you'd like to make this appointment online, press 1 and we'll text you a link to do, to schedule your own appointment. And I thought, oh, well, I'll save everybody some time. I'll just do that and schedule the appointment myself. So, I hit 1, the link came in, I opened it up, and I quickly realized what a mistake that thought was, because it was so much more convoluted, and so many, they wanted pages and pages of information that I know they already have because I've been a patient there for 18 years. So I was like, why am I filling this out? They already know all this stuff. So I'm going page next, filling out all the things. And I finally get to the point where I can schedule an appointment. And the first available day that it gives me was 22 days from yesterday. And
Not
I thought,
prompt.
is that real? Could that be? So I scrapped the whole thing. I just closed out of the whole page.
That's annoying.
And called again, like I had done what felt like hours before. And this time I did not fall for the self-scheduling option. I pressed 2 to speak with a receptionist. And so I get the receptionist, and she says, would tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning work? And I was like, yes, that would work perfectly. Do you know what happened when I tried to schedule through your self-scheduling service? It tried to put me at the end of the month. And then she gave me some answer as to why that might have been, but it didn't matter. Anyway, so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I can see your face as to wondering whether I indeed am all right or not. And I have a very large, I don't know, what would you call it? Bandage, I guess? A very large bandage.
Call it a bandage, yes.
Yes, covering half the side of my throat. Mm-hmm. They had to scrape something off. It's not that unusual for me. I've had a lot of things scraped off of my skin to be biopsied. We'll see. I'm pretty sure it's fine, but you can see why I didn't necessarily want to wait 22 more days. Yes.
You look like one of the broken men, to be honest. Sort of shambling through the Riverlands looking for handouts.
Yeah, I did. You could see the top of it is kind of pulled away because I wanted to peek. I could feel her digging, and I was like, is she digging all the way through to my artery? Because it's right above my jugular. It's not so bad. It looks like a hole in my neck. About
she dug a hole.
If someone burned me with a cigar or something. So that's how my day's been. How about you? What's going on with you?
Not a lot. You know, Carson is getting certification in environmental education.
Oh, yes. Right. I remember the story about the classroom that she had to give the different levels of education to.
Exactly. So, but to get this certification is a ton of work, like really a lot of work. She has to do all kinds of classes and all kinds of sort of site visits to places where environmental education is going on. So our weekends at the moment are going on nature hikes and to places of environmental interest.
Yeah.
It's quite nice. I'm not hating it, but
preferably not in January and February, but
well, yeah,
beggars
we
can't
went
be
for a
choosers,
hike.
I guess.
We went for a hike on Saturday or Sunday last week, and it was pleasant enough. It wasn't. I actually was in a t-shirt.
Yes,
I was chilly in the t-shirt. I'd overestimated it slightly, but the guy giving the presentation, so it's just a guy comes on the hike with us, but he's pointing all the stuff out that we should be noticing.
Right.
He was very good and very knowledgeable and very pleasant, and but he stumbled over a word, and he stumbled over the same word 3 times as he tried to say it, and sort of like, how it is when you stumble over a word and do it and then stumble again and then stumble again. You've kind of like brought the conversation to a halt over the fact that you can't say this word.
You've done 173 episodes of this with me.
Acutely aware.
Yes. I could derail a whole episode by just stumbling over one word.
The thing was, the word that he stumbled on was effortlessly.
You feel like that would just come effortless.
Apparently not. So Carson has another story from her environmental education. So one of the things she does is she takes animals to classrooms. Yeah.
Okay.
There's this central repository of animals.
Jack Hanna used to do on like the Carson show and stuff.
It's an American thing, but yes, I know what you're talking about. Yes. So she takes a selection of animals to different schools and different classrooms.
Yeah.
And I will say to the Parks and Rec people, in particular to Carson's manager, her manager is excellent. I'm a manager myself, and I pay attention to what other managers do. She's very, very good. However, I have found the blind spot. Yeah, the blind spot was you can't really send people out with wild animals without teaching them a little bit about the wild animals.
That does seem like that's a problematic blind spot.
So she took a lizard of some sort. I mean, it probably has a type, but to me, they're all lizards.
Right.
And it was standing on her palm, and she was talking to a class of 5-year-olds. And the teacher interrupted Carson to say, "Is the lizard going to bite you?" And Carson looked at it, and the lizard had reared up, opened its mouth, and went hump onto her palm.
No.
Carson said it took her just everything she had to not just bash her hand on the table.
That would have been quite the sight for these students.
But she had a perfect circle bite left in her hand when this thing let go of her. Like it drew blood. She played it off at the time, and then she sort of took it around for the kids to see it, kind of thing. And the teacher whispered, "Did it bite you?" And Carson was like, "Yes."
Yes. I don't know if it's poisonous or not.
So, yeah, exactly. She called the manager, and the manager said, "Oh yeah, we all know what to do in this situation."
Like, do we?
wait, what now? She said, "Just wash it, you'll be fine." Because it had also peed in the same hand, so she's bleeding,
goodness.
and there's urine in her hand as well.
Yeah.
But then it turns out, it's got history. It's bitten several of them. And the manager was like, "Well, you just hold it like this." And Carson was like, "It's the first I'm hearing."
Maybe that information would have been more useful before she held the lizard.
You're going to remember it now, though, aren't you?
Right. She's a better manager than even you realize.
That's
she
true.
needed that reinforcement of
playing 3-dimensional chess with her management.
Right. Oh, goodness. Well, I can imagine her trying to hang in there stoically.
She has a stoicism that I can't match, so it's better it was her than me.
Oh, that's funny.
All right, well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Daenerys Targaryen all those years ago?
Ages and ages.
Last we saw of Dany, she had taken Meereen, freed the slaves, crucified the masters in great numbers, 163 to be precise, forgiven Barristan Selmy, but banished Jorah Mormont, and against advice had decided to stay in Meereen to secure its future and to give time for her dragons to grow. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Well, Dany is roused from her sleep to see the body of a murdered Unsullied. Stalwart Shield was the man's name. He was found in an alleyway with a goat's genitals in his mouth. Well, let me be clear. Severed genitals. There wasn't a goat just standing over him.
Taking advantage of it.
Yeah, that took me a while to get out.
That's what he said.
Oh, shoot. And a harpy daubed in his blood on the wall above his body. She's curious that he was coming back from a brothel. She commands Grey Worm to ensure that her men never walk alone. She's worried that the sons of the Harpy are becoming bolder, and Sir Barristan is worried that the Unsullied are not the right men for the job of policing a city. But Dany has no alternatives.
Her Khalasar is outside the city, ensuring the surrounding regions are under control and feeding the city. The Second Sons are south, defending from Yunkish incursion. Dario and the Stormcrows are trying to reopen trade routes with the Lazarene. She takes her leave and prepares for a day of petitioners. On the way, she sees Viserion curled around a tree sunning himself. She rubs his jaw fondly and chides him for his laziness. She knows the dragons are getting unruly. There have been incidents, but she has no time to train them. She looks forward to the day when she can ride them.
She wears Meereen's dress, the tokar, which annoys her on several levels, and dons a crown with 3 dragon heads. Her neck will ache by the end of the day, but she's the last dragon, so she'll bear it. She thinks about the sons of the Harpy and how they would love to see her dead, but she recalls the crucified slave children and hardens her heart. She meets with Resnak Mo Resnak, the unctuous seneschal of Meereen, and Skahaz Mo Kandak, Giscari nobleman who has abandoned the Meereenese fashion to endear himself to Dany, aka Shavepate, despised by the sons of the Harpy.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
The latter encourages her to avenge Stalwart Shield by murdering nobles, 1 from each family this time, 2 next time, there won't be a third. Resnak is pained by this suggestion. He's sure that the sons of the Harpy are base-born. Dany is sure that she doesn't trust him. She ups the reward for information against the sons of the Harpy. Missandei then heralds Dany's arrival. First on the docket is Lord Gale, the envoy from Astapor. He has slippers from Cleon the Great. They're fancy but too small. Cleon wants to deal with the wise masters of Yunkai using his new Unsullied. Dany regrets not taking Yunkai after defeating its army in the field. The masters went back to slaving immediately. But Cleon needs to deal with his own issues. She knows that he's no better than the Yunkai.
Hisdar Zolorak is next. Dany is able to predict his every word and in fact recounts his entire argument for him. The fighting pits closed when the slaves were freed, and Hisdar bought them at a reduced rate. The nobles want sport, and many of the freed slaves need to make a living, but Dany will not see them reopened. Resnak mentions the taxes that could be raised, but Dany is resolute. Hisdar departs gracefully. The two share a repartee. Next is Grazdan Zo Galare. He wants money for the weaving skills his former slaves are now making a living from. Dany tests him on the slave's name. When he's found wanting, she makes him provide the freed women with a new loom.
Dany insists that the next petitioner not be dressed in a tokar, i.e., one of the lowly people. The problems are legion. She tries to provide justice, but it's hard. The sacking of the city led to an orgy of crime. She cannot punish all. One denied child tries to attack her, but trips on his tokar. She forgives him, but knows that the Harpy just gained another son. After that, she gets some nice gifts, crushed toes, and a sore bum. The last crop of petitioners are farmers who've lost sheep to the dragons. She compensates, but creates stricter criteria going forward. As the farmers file out, one stays behind. His sack is also full of bones, but those of a child.
Oh, no.
So, it's not a great chapter for Daenerys because, like, a lot of bad things happen kind of thing, you know, sort of... killing of Stalwart Shield, and then sort of like the whole day is kind of miserable. The petitioners are annoying, and then this last part is sort of like obviously extremely traumatic for her that her dragons have done this to a child. But generally, she's in a better mood than last time we saw her, I think, because she was in a pretty dark place last time. I thought that, you know...
Yeah, well, yeah, because she had just exiled Jorah. Yeah.
Exactly, that was the thing. But... now she seems, I don't know, that's lifted from her a little bit. She's still expecting more treachery and what have you, but I don't know, just maybe the year to sort herself.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, right. She, I mean, she's had time to process Jorah betraying her, which surely is one of the most painful things that she has experienced in a while, even though she's experienced a lot of really painful things, but she thought he was her person, and here he's been, betraying her all along, or at least she feels like he has.
Yes, not to relitigate, but can I just say, there is a different way of viewing that, which is he really was her person. Yes, he was sent to spy on her and to betray her, but he converted heart and soul, you know.
Yes,
so...
you could definitely make that argument. He saved her life in Vase Dothrak, so, I mean...
From the assassin sent because of his intel,
Well, there is that. But if he was ever going to abandon the cause, that was the time to do it.
Yes.
It was do or don't at that point.
So I don't know about you, Mackelly, but I need a refresher on where she's been. So from Vase Dothrak, she came south across the Red Wastes into
Karth.
In Karth, she met the Warlocks and the House of the Undying and got the prophecy, around which she's built a lot of her plans for the future since then. It certainly keeps recurring to her, this prophecy.
Which will come up in this chapter. We'll hit that, yeah.
And then she left Karth she didn't sack it or kill everybody in Karth, right? She just left on reasonable terms.
Right.
Well,
Zarazo
apart from
and
with
Daxus.
The Warlocks, who didn't.
Yeah, they're angry. Yes, she was with Zarazo and Daxus, and then remember Illyrio Mopata sent the three ships with Strong Belwas and Arston, who turned out to be Barristan Selmy, to bring her back to Pentos. On the way back to Pentos is when she and Jorah hatched the plan to kind of go off from the route to take you back to Pentos, instead go into Slaver's Bay and buy an unsullied army in Astapor and use Drogon as the trade. That's when she tricked the Great Masters, got control of the whip that controls the Unsullied. Drogon burns some of the Great Masters, and the Unsullied kill the rest, and then the slaves rose up, and that's how she ended up sacking Astapor and freeing the slaves.
Right.
When she left Astapor, she left a council of 3 to rule: a scholar, a priest, and a healer. But then this Cleon, who also comes up in this chapter, a former butcher, he convinced the populace that the council planned to reinstitute slavery, and they all rose up and killed the council members. And then Cleon slid right in, styled himself as Cleon the Great, and became the king of Astapor.
Right. And so she doesn't trust him at all, really. She thinks that
he's just as bad as the Yonkai.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But we got a little more in this chapter, because Gale, his envoy, Cleon's envoy, he's the first up in the audience, and we learn that Cleon is requesting that Dany and Meereen ally with Cleon in Astapor, and they march on Yunkai with Cleon's new Unsullied, and Dany considers these new Unsullied to be a jape because they're basically he's reinstituted slavery in Astapor. It's just now the former masters of the slaves and the former slaves are now the masters, and this new Unsullied are the gelded male children of the former great masters. And Dany thinks that they're basically a poor copy of the original, poorly trained.
What makes the Unsullied is not the castration, I feel. It's all the training that follows.
Yes. Otherwise, Varys could be a member of the Unsullied.
So in Yunkai, she was able to win Yunkai despite the fact it was guarded by a huge force, including 2 companies of sellswords, the Stormcrows and the Second Sons. She was able to woo, I think might be not too strong a word, Dario to her side. And his Stormcrows switched sides, and that sort of, there was a sneak attack in the night, and they were easily able to defeat the Second Sons and the Yunkai army. But I think I'd missed this maybe, she never entered Yunkai and ruled it.
Right. And that was where, I'm pretty sure that's the city where she was riding through the people on her horse, and they were all shouting "Mother."
Oh, yeah.
But then she just left. She did not bother to subdue the slavery in that city.
And so, according to Gale, Cleon's envoy from Astapor, the Yunkai have gone back to slavery in her absence.
Almost immediately. As it's understood. Yeah, and then from there, she's just going north along the coast of Slaver's Bay, basically, Astapor, Yunkai, and up the coast to Meereen. And as you alluded to in the summary, along the way, they found 163 dead slave children nailed to each milepost between Yunkai and Meereen. Jorah and Barristan Selmy, at this point, were both in the doghouse because she discovered they both had lied to her. Mm-hmm. So she sent them with a stealth group into the sewers of Meereen, into the city. They threw open the fighting pits, and then, chaos ensued inside. And then, remember last week we were talking about, did Illyrio know what happened to his 3 ships he sent to Dany? And we were like, well, last we saw they were off the coast. Yes. Well, I was remembered when we were reading this chapter, they tore them apart and used the wood from the ships to make the ram that broke the gate open. So that's what happened to the ships. Not just stole the cargo, but destroyed them entirely.
Do we know what the Targaryens' words are?
Fire and blood.
Fire and blood, that's right. It's not we always pay our debts. It's
right. Yes, the land.
It's more like that's ours.
Right. That's mine now.
Mine now. Yeah. Mine now. That's perfect. I like this.
So that brings us to more or less to current.
Yeah. So the occupation is going patchily well. I mean, obviously, the freed slaves mostly will be content with this. I mean, we heard about the weavers who'd set up in business and were doing well and were about to have a brand new loom delivered for their troubles.
Right. Yeah.
So it's definitely working for some. It certainly
Success story.
Yeah. It certainly isn't working for the noble families. They are deeply out of pocket and deeply annoyed, and they keep pestering her for recompense for all this. I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a tough, because there's going to be so much bad feeling. How do you ever overcome it?
I was thinking that same thing as I was reading this chapter. Especially when she's holding court, and the former nobles and the freedmen are totally separated on opposite sides of the room, and she thinks until they stand together, this is never going to work. And I thought, how are they ever going to get this to work?
Yeah. Actually, the role model for this, of course, is Nelson Mandela. You know, when
Oh,
apartheid
yes.
came to an end,
Apartheid. Yeah.
he basically said what we're going to do is have truth and reconciliation, and they talked about their crimes, but sort of put a moratorium on sentencing them. And I mean, it didn't solve all the problems, but it certainly got over that first hurdle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, she realizes at the beginning when she is looking at Stalwart Shield, the dead Unsullied, she realizes she's still at war.
Yeah.
And Barristan Selmy says, you're still at war, and you don't have the type of people, you don't have the type of force that you need to do the things you need to do in this city. The Unsullied are not suited for it, nor would knights be, he admits, nor do they have any, so it's not really a concern. But you need someone that can ask questions, track down leads. She needs a master of whisperers or a Littlefinger type, you know?
Yeah, that's very
Unfortunately, Barristan is cut much more from the Ned Stark cloth than the Littlefinger Varys cloth.
Right.
So
he can't do it either. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Right. So this war could rage on for years if they can't figure out a way to properly restore orders. And it's not just inside. We've got this guerrilla warfare stuff going on inside, but outside there's also chaos and complications. I mean, outside of the city, the estates in the hills where the food is produced, they're still using slaves. So the Khalasar, her small Khalasar, has been sent there to get them to comply with the freed slave rule. The Yunkai, Dany fears that they're going to attack Meereen, so she has Brown Ben Plum and the Second Sons guarding the southern, border with Yunkai to keep them.
Yeah,
there.
Now that we've gone through the recap of how she got here, I'd be a little bit concerned having those Second Sons as my defense against the Yunkai. I mean, if they come in force, it's like, hey, we were just infiltrating her camp. We're back on your side now.
Right, yeah. But then the Lazarene, which is to the north of them, they've closed the trade routes through their territory. And she is... Remember, the Lazarene are peaceful people. They're called the Lamb Men by the Dothraki. They're often attacked and sold as slaves by the Dothraki. The village where Drogo was injured and they met Mirri Maz Duur, that was a Lazarene village. Well, Dario Naharis and his Stormcrows are sent to negotiate the reopening of those trade routes. So that really only leaves the Unsullied to handle this police work, and I'm with Barristan. Not ideal force for it.
Yeah. But I'll have more to say about that in pedantry, so I'm going to withhold my comment right here.
Okay.
It's noteworthy that Stalwart Shield was coming back from a brothel. I think Grey Worm is the one who says, whilst we can't do the thing that one would normally do in the brothel, we don't have that. Sort of our hearts still need this kind of thing, which is an interesting insight.
It's something like, although we don't have male parts, we still have a man's heart.
Right.
And according to Grey Worm, what Stalwart Shield was doing in a brothel was paying a woman to hold him. Yeah. And Dany has to remind herself she's the blood of the dragon, and the blood of the dragon doesn't weep when he says that, because it's really touching and also very sad that this this man just wants to be loved, he just wants to be held.
Mm-hmm.
And he was once, she figures he was probably from lightless or, somewhere, because he's got fair skin and light colored eyes. And he was once a boy, and he was probably kidnapped and sold into slavery. And, I'm sure his story is incredibly tragic.
Yeah. And it didn't get any better here.
No.
So she wears the tokar for the business of the day. The tokar's annoyances, we mentioned them in the thing, but just to list them, it's very fussy and impractical, and therefore could only be worn by someone who's not working, i.e. it's the garment of the masters, not the slaves.
Right. Yeah.
And so she feels the sort of self-consciousness about that. but her advisors compelled her that she had to wear it because she'd be seen as a sort of outsider and a barbarian if she didn't wear it. And so she has to wear it just to have authority in Meereen. The person that gave this advice was the Green Grace, the high priestess of the Giscari Temple of the Graces in Meereen, and her name is Galaza Galare, which is a great name, Galaza Galare. But also, it's the surname of the guy who wanted the recompense for the Weavers, and they are cousins apparently. So
yeah, I expected him to be, being that Galaza Galare is kind of, she's working to try and help Dany assimilate and bring this city together. I expected him to be a little less of the jerk that he was, to, wanting, but I guess cousins, they're not necessarily cut from the same cloth. So
yeah.
But I get it. It's tough, because you wouldn't want to wear that because you wouldn't want to wear the garb of the former masters because it's, you want that, you want to put that away, But at the same time, she is trying to get both sides to come together. So, I can see why the Green Grace suggested it.
So she has new people in her entourage who we should cover, but they do have Giscari names, so there's going to be some stumbling here, so be warned.
Oh yeah, their names are impossible.
So the primary players, Resnak Mo Resnak is the seneschal of Meereen, so the top steward or administrator. Dany doesn't trust him, and he thinks that the Sons of the Harpy are base-born, but to me that's why I would not trust him, because there's no logic to that whatsoever. The base-born, the poor and the enslaved, would have no interest in killing the freer of slaves soldiers. But the deposed masters, they would. They would for sure.
Yes, it certainly... I would need him to make a pretty compelling argument that they're base-born.
Yeah.
The base-born are the ones that are finally starting to get something when before they had absolutely nothing. So why would they be rising up against this new... rule.
I will say, though, if you're trying to be a spy in her midst, you wouldn't say that. You'd keep quiet about that. So I think he is what he is. He's a Tokar wearer, but he is actually an honest broker with Daenerys.
Yeah, I can see your logic. Yeah. Well, then we also, the other person that she meets before she holds court is Skahazmo Kandak, otherwise known as the Shave Pate, and he is a nobleman of Meereen, and he shaved the customary Giscari hairdo to show his allegiance with Dany and her new rule. Now, you mentioned it in the summary, but he is in favor of severe punishments for the great houses in order to stop these murders. You kind of alluded to it in the summary, but take one man from each great house. The next time there's a murder, you kill those men from those great houses. You take two the next time, and then when there's a murder, you kill both of them. And he says there won't be a third, which is probably effective, but also incredibly brutal.
Yeah. I will say, actually, as you started to describe it there, I was like, actually, this is what you might say if you're working for the Sons of the Harpy.
Oh.
Try and lead her down a path that would only lead to revolt. I mean, that would be... She would be toppled if she tried that, I think. Because...
Yeah. Huh.
I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
As you said it, it's kind of like, do the opposite of what you'd expect them to do. But as you said it, it sounded so outlandish what he was saying. It's like, you're not actually providing useful counsel there. You're tricking her.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, like on what they said at face value, it sounds like it'd be the other way around.
Right.
But if you were a secret agent,
right,
you would behave the other way around, So
just on the hair, Resnak Mo Resnak is also shiny of pate, but that's not by choice. That's biological.
right.
So these two are the only two bald Giscari.
Well, now there's a whole shave pate movement.
That's
where
right.
People are
That's right.
following.
But as you said, Skahaz is the shave pate. There are shave pates around him, but he's the
capital S shave pate.
And then there's Hizdar Zolorak. He was the wealthy merchant who bought up the fighting pits and wants to reinstate the fighting. Dany thinks she needs him as an ally. He's wealthy with many connections, but not enough to agree to reopening the pits. He has friends in Meereen, Karth, Volantis, Lys, Illyria, Tolos. So he's definitely a good connection. And there's definitely some chemistry between them. They were quite flirty with one another and seemed to enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, and Resnak and the Green Grace have both urged Dany to marry Meereenese, and she considers, maybe I should give Hizdar a second look at at that option. But I was thinking, because we know more than she does about what's going on in Westeros, that would be bad timing, because we were told by Doran Martell that his son Quentyn is on his way to bring back fire and blood. Now, he didn't say bring Daenerys Targaryen back to Dorne, but it certainly seems like that's what he means.
Yeah.
So
she perhaps has to hold off on that until it's clear who the right person to marry is. This would be possibly a good short-term thing, but Meereen is not her ultimate goal.
It's not her ultimate goal. So, she'd have to make a choice between marrying someone like Hizdar and uniting Meereen versus marrying to secure an alliance in Westeros, which is more important to her. Mm-hmm. This was not the stated goal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but I mean, she's not committing to it. She's just thinking about it. So,
right. Yeah. I just hope, I get, now that she's kind of dug in here in Meereen and Slaver's Bay, I get why she's thinking about these things. Like, this is a way that I could fix the situation. But she does have to keep in mind what her primary mission has always been, basically, since Viserys died.
Yeah, and where he has friends were all familiar cities, apart from Illyria and Tolos. Illyria is an island city on the west side of Slaver's Bay, and Tolos is a city on the west side of Slaver's Bay on a small peninsula. So that's where they are. So I think Resnak and Skahaz are interesting additions. They're not exactly in her inner circle yet, but they, particularly Skahaz, have committed themselves to her future. There's no going back for him. But again, as I say it, now that I've got suspicions about him, I'm like, well, that's a good way to alleviate suspicions,
Right. They both have facets about them that you could say, well, if you look at it from this light, they look like they're on her side. If you look at it from this light, it's exactly what a secret agent would do.
Yeah.
So
both seem capable, particularly Resnak, I would say. But again, that contention that the Sons of the Harpy are lowborn just seems way off base. But I will agree with Resnak. I'm a lover, not a fighter, but I would agree that reopening those pits is not a terrible idea. If you've got the public clamoring for blood kind of thing, and you've got slaves standing idle, waiting, wishing that they could do that for money instead of just because they're being told to.
Yeah, right.
And you can make some money off it yourself. It's got a lot of upside, even if it's brutal.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Yep, and they were, like you said, they were slaves in the fighting pit. Now they could be freedmen in the fighting pit being paid. And when she was doing the whole argument for Hizdar, you get the sense of how important these fighting pits are to the city.
Yeah.
And so, maybe that would help alleviate some of the anger and frustration, and maybe it would go to creating a little bit of healing process, which is weird to say, opening fighting pits to create a healing process. Maybe she could lay some ground rules, like you have to use blunted instruments, blunted weapons, almost like almost like a melee in Westeros, a tourney melee.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got an idea. Instead of fighting to the death in these pits, maybe Barristan Selmy could show the Meereenese how a good Westerosi tourney works. He could teach them jousting and archery and,
very nice.
And melees and all these things.
Yeah. So several times Dany thinks back on the prophecy about betrayal. If you remember, the prophecy was that she would be betrayed once for
blood, once for gold, and once for love.
Blood, gold, and love. And so the two she thinks has already happened is Mirri Maz Duur and Jorah Mormont. Mirri Maz Duur for blood?
That's what I would think, yes.
And Jorah for love, or is he gold?
Gold is what I would think, because it's what it's for. Once for gold.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say Jorah was betraying her for love.
Yes. I take your point exactly. But she thinks that the third one might be in her circle now. I will go out on a limb here, and I will suggest that we have met in this chapter a high-ranking son of the Harpy. I don't know who it is, but I think somebody that she either met either in her circle, Resnack or Skahaz, or one of the petitioners is actually a serious person in Sons of the Harpy. But I don't know who. I really don't.
It certainly stands to reason. Whoever the Harpy, the head Harpy that the Sons of the Harpy are, taking orders from, they would have to be someone of influence.
Yeah.
So it would stand to reason that one of these people that is very influential in the city is the person in charge. But this is a good time to maybe update ourselves on some of the prophecies that Dany received at the House of the Undying. We just discussed the prophecy for the 3 betrayals, once for blood, once for gold, once for love. We're pretty sure, it seems very likely, for blood is Mirri Maz Duur. For gold is Jorah. It's not like he was given a chest of gold, but he was given forgiveness and, his exile and his banishment rescinded. But, it does allow him to go back to Westeros and pursue gold. He could go back to Bear Island and become the Lord of Bear Island again, I guess.
Is Mrs. Mormont still around?
Oh, Lenise Hightower. Yeah, she's in List.
Hightower, yes.
She came up in that last Sam chapter.
Right. We just talked about her. I thought we had.
But the one for love, we don't have anything that fits.
It's also weird to think of someone being betrayed for love. Like,
right.
What does that mean? I guess it could be for the love of another person, not for love of Dany.
Right. I've seen some theories such as, say for instance, Tyrion makes it to Dany, and they make it to Westeros, and he frees Jaime, or out of love, the way Jaime freed him. Something like that. I've seen.
That makes sense.
Theories. But then we've also got the 3 fires that you must light. You being Dany, 1 for life, 1 for death, and 1 to love. And
the dragons was the life.
Well, so you could make the argument that all 3 fit Drogo's pyre, because life of the dragons, the death of Drogo, and love,
definitely,
putting Drogo out of his misery, because he was in a vegetative state. She, put him to death, but that's only 1 fire. So, but Drogon did light up the House of the Undying moments after this prophecy. So could that be the 1 for death?
Interesting.
And I wondered if the glass candles burning might,
yes.
if it was
play
a factor.
1 for showing off your cool magic, then that would definitely be
Right.
it.
One for impressing acolytes.
Yeah.
So we're not really a whole lot closer. I'm sure that pyre is at least one of
them.
the.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
So, but then we've got the 3 mounts that you must ride: 1 to bed, 1 to dread, 1 to love. Again, bed sounds like lust, desire. She has had desirous thoughts of Dario in the previous Dany chapter, so maybe he is going to be 1 to bed. A mount to dread sounds like one of the dragons, right? I mean,
right.
That's she even thinks about it in this chapter.
Yeah.
Soon they'll be big enough to bear my weight. Then that would definitely be dreadful to her opponents.
Yes, indeed.
A mount to love. She loves her horse Silver. She loved Drogo. So, maybe some of these are past tense because the pyre is also past tense. She loves her dragons. So we're still not a whole lot closer on some of these.
Okay. So overall, I think it's a daunting set of circumstances that Daenerys faces. I mean, Meereen is barely under control. There's vicious grievances on both sides. She's having to spread her forces thin to deal with the concerns outside the city. And everywhere she's been, they're backsliding in the previously conquered cities. And the dragons are kind of undermining her standing with the ordinary people with, eating children. That's not a good... That's a PR faux pas, if you will.
Right. Is there any way to stop that from happening? I mean, they're already currently still too small to ride. What happens in 6 months or a year?
Yeah.
They could eat an entire village of people.
I mean, I don't know much about dragon husbandry, but I would think that you could throw sheep to them and save them the problem of going out looking for things.
Yeah. Westeros, I mean, they had dragons in King's Landing for century plus,
with a roof over them.
Right. Yeah. Keep them dry when it rains. But it just feels like this maybe could be more common if left up to their own devices. So I wonder if dragons are aware enough to know not to eat humans because they're kind of bonded with Targaryens.
Interesting.
But
they were really hungry that one day. Or the kid was too near a sheep.
Maybe, gosh. Or, is it just luck that this is the first time that this has happened, or the first time it's been reported?
Right. The first time it's been found, others have been snatched up and just swallowed whole.
Right, yeah. Now, I will say, she mentions when she's petting Viserion in the chapter, she thinks, how hot he is to the touch, and she thinks that dragons are fire-made flesh, and she gives credit to a book that Jorah gave her that that quote.
Yeah.
But Quaithe, the Shadowbinder from Ashai back in Karth, told her that exact same thing. Dragons are fire-made flesh. So she doesn't get any credit. Apparently Dany doesn't recall that conversation.
or off screen she said something like, "Have you read that book that Jorah gave me too?"
Right.
I do think, sort of like, I it's a philosophical point to bring up here, that the dragons eating the child is a foreshadowing of Dany's future journey. Now, I don't know Dany's future journey, both literally and for the sake of the discussion. She can't fulfill her ambitions without the dragons, but the dragons are going to do awful things along the way. And she has to decide if she can live with those things in pursuit of that ambition. And that got me thinking about ambitious people. I mean, I'm not without ambition myself, but I'm not the most ambitious person. Ambitious people must face a similar dilemma along the way. Not quite as atrocious as this one of, like, children being eaten, but
sure.
I'll bet that most ambitious people reach the same self-serving conclusion, which is that when I get to what I'm trying to get to, things will be so good for so many people that the pain I've caused along the way will just be a drop in a bucket, of all the good I'm going to do. And I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that Daenerys is going to reach that same conclusion. She's going to try to mitigate, try to stop the dragons from eating children, but she's not going to banish them. She's not going to say, all right, you fly off to Ashai by the sea and I'll try and take Westeros without you.
Right. Yeah, that does seem unlikely. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It actually reminded me of the trolley dilemma, which I think we might have brought up before on the podcast.
I think so, but
So the trolley dilemma is a trolley's running towards 5 people, it's going to kill them, but you can pull a lever and then it will kill one other person.
Right.
So the question is, would you pull the lever? Because if you don't pull the lever, then those 5 people get it, but you didn't do anything. But if you do pull the lever, you've saved 5 people at the cost of 1 person, but that person died because of your action.
Yes.
And the thing about it is, I've been thinking about it a lot this week. Once I put it in the notes, I started really thinking about this. For me, it's black and white. It's obvious. You pull the lever. Of course, you pull the lever because you're doing the most good. And this is the two sides of this are known as utilitarianism, which is what do the most good. Pull the lever, versus deontology. And deontology says, don't do any harm. Do nothing that causes harm, even if the outcome is a good thing.
Yeah.
So deontologists would not pull the lever. So I got really interested in what the outcome of these, the sort of social studies on the trolley problem was. And I found that 90% of people are with me, that roughly 90% of people say they would pull the lever. They would be utilitarian.
Yes. Sure. Yeah.
But
I could see that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I asked Carson and I said, what percentage? I mean, I didn't ask Carson to do the trolley problem. I asked her what percentage she thought people would say. And she reckoned 50-50. So I think she's a bit more of a deontologist than I am.
Uh-huh. Right.
But for me, the reason I'm the utilitarian side is because for me, the inaction is my action.
It is. I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
The line from the Rush song, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Ah, very nice.
It's funny. That's the second time that's come up today. I said the same thing to Stacey about her not making a choice about something. Wow. And I said that same quote to her. Wow. That is really weird that's come up twice in about the past 3 hours.
But the most interesting thing I read about this week was that some people created a simulation which actually genuinely simulated the real trolley problem. And there were people sort of sitting in a control room who were faced with this problem live and on the fly and had to decide what to do. And only 2 of the 7 pulled the lever.
We'll be right back. And welcome back to another episode of By Its Cover. I'm your host, Katie.
I'm Jake.
And you've started listening to By Its Cover. How did our intro go?
I know, it's kind of funny, though, that you can't get it.
I can't get it. Oh, I know why. Okay. And welcome back to another episode of By Its Cover, a podcast where we pick out books by their cover,
read them,
consume them,
read them,
and then we talk about them on the show. I'm your host, Katie.
Oh, we're starting over.
No.
I'm Jake.
Yep.
I could see in reality that, first of all, some of them might be paralyzed, paralysis from analysis.
Right.
Like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Too late, you know?
Yeah.
I could see that.
And you've actually hit the nail on the head here, because one of the things I read about it was that the study's been performed many times in many different ways, that the outcome of the study is extremely sensitive to the specific wording that people are given for the scenario. And I think that goes to what you're saying, that even though to me, it seems like such a black and white issue, it is in fact quite grey, in that sort of like, tell me exactly what had happened here, sort of, and exactly what you hear can influence your decision on this one. So
sure, yeah.
And I will say as well, Dany's issue is far greyer than the trolley problem, because her trolley problem is, if you pull the lever, your dragons are going to kill innocents and children for years to come. But if you don't, then some people in the next continent over will probably have reduced prospects, and some less than stellar people will have too much power.
Right.
They're a lot less tangible than 5 dead, 1 dead, you know.
Yes, it's not quite clear cut as that.
Mm-hmm. But again, because I think she's got ambition, she will rationalize it in her mind that, you know,
Right.
once I get there, I'll do so much good, it'll be worth it.
Yes, I can change the world.
Exactly.
She's trying to change life in the city for what she perceives as the better.
She is certainly changing it for some of the shepherds. Not
Yes.
in the right direction, though.
Although it's not a bad gig there. You get coin for bringing in charred bones. You know.
Yeah.
As long as it's not a child you're bringing in, you could scrape up, you know, burnt bones or whatever.
Yeah.
I need some more coin. I've got charred bones here.
If I pool all those bones back together, won't I end up with 1 corpse instead of 7 that you're claiming?
Right.
Time for some spoilers. If you join us at the upper tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer levels, you can get in on the spoiler action.
There is so much to talk about in spoilers about what's coming that we could spend an hour doing it. So we're going to stop
That's enough for tonight.
Here. Yes.
All right, give me some background.
All right. Well, okay, so the Sons of the Harpy is the underground network working to destabilize Dany's new regime, as we've just spent a lot of time talking about. But why do they call themselves the Sons of the Harpy? Well, it goes back to the now ruined city of Old Gis. Now, this area of Essos is known as Giscard, and the old empire of Gis was once the peak of civilization in the world. The capital of the empire was Old Gis. Probably back then it was just called Gis. The city's emblem was a harpy that had a woman's torso, the wings of a bat instead of arms, the legs of an eagle, and a scorpion's tail, and it held a thunderbolt in its claws. I think we talked a little bit about the harpy in Dany's chapters in A Storm of Swords. Well, the Giscari were eventually defeated by the Valyrian Freehold. However, after the doom of Valyria, the Giscari rose again to take hold of the slave trade. So you might understand why the Giscari are leery of a new dragon-owning ruler.
Especially one who's down on slavery. That's particularly troubling. Yeah, interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, comparisons with the television show. Stalwart Shield becomes White Rat. There was a kind of interesting discussion about the name there. They felt that Stalwart Shield was the name he chose himself.
Right.
But the Benioff and Weiss, or whoever it was making this decision, decided it would just be easier if they all had names like Grey Worm. So he became White Rat for the
Okay,
for
I
the
got
TV
you.
show. His companion at the brothel betrays him to the Sons of the Harpy. He's actually murdered in the brothel.
Oh, all right.
Most of the Meereenese characters were dropped. Raznak and Skahaz. Most of
their names are too complicated.
Exactly. Most of the petitioners were condensed into Hizdar, who's played by Joel Fry, who's kind of a good actor. He also takes some of Reznak's lines. For example, he claims that the Sons of the Harpy were low-born.
Okay.
He does want the pits open, but he also represents the families who've lost their fortunes. So he's kind of like an amalgam of all these petitioners. The bereaved father is kept, and Dany has a horrified reaction there too.
All right. Good to know. Yeah, good stuff.
Pedantry. I tipped my hand on this earlier, but let me just mention, it's probably more just irony than pedantry, but the Unsullied are universally used as guards and police, bodyguards all the time. That's what they're used for. Now, Barristan did say it wasn't really the policing that he said they weren't fit for. It was the uncovering the plot.
The detective work.
The detective work is what they couldn't do. But he described what they do as fighting in formation in battles, and they literally don't do that. They literally do not do that. They may be trained for it, but the people what they get used for in the modern world is guarding gates.
That's what Illyrio used them for. Yeah.
But I don't think he's alone, right? I mean, we heard that a bunch of times.
Yeah. Definitely not alone.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah. I follow where you're going with that. I like it. Yeah.
All right, news and notes. Somebody
Don't know who it was.
All right, let me put it this way. Whenever something gets forgotten when we're packing on vacation, it's always my fault, and it always irks me. I'm like, if the object that you want is not in the bags, then we all forgot it.
That's right.
So we forgot to put chapter markers in the Tyrion 1 chapter, but it has now been fixed. Thank you for fixing it, Mackelly. I'm sorry that I forgot.
I just got, I got busy and I thought I'll do it later, and then I forgot, and then I remembered, and then I forgot again. And anyway, thank you to the Spotify listener who mentioned it this morning, and I remembered, oh, that's right, I forgot twice. So it has been fixed. Hopefully by the time you all hear this, it's been populated to all the various places, but I think it does take like 24 hours or so to get out there to everybody. So apologies.
And in exciting news, Mackelly's taking a week off coming up, and so I'll be joined by Jenny of Oldstones for the first Brand chapter, right? That's the one we'll be doing together. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
Jenny is good
I'm
company.
Sure.
She's
Yes.
nicer than you. I'm bored witless of her stories as I am.
She won't forget chapter markers.
Wait, though, will I be in charge that day? Be lucky if there's a podcast.
We'll have to hammer those details out.
All right. Well, thank you for doing that, Jenny. That it's nice that we can occasionally take time off because we've got you as a backup. We appreciate it.
Yes, it sure is. It sure is great to know that we're in good hands when one of us is not available.
Yeah. All right, let's conclude this one. There's a lot on Dany's plate.
Yeah, sure is.
But most of it is mundane. Most of it is not.
Yeah, she's getting her first taste of ruling.
Yes.
Like truly ruling.
Yes.
And this is small potatoes compared to ruling an entire kingdom. So,
right.
Right. But there are issues she probably won't face when she's the queen.
Well, I was going to
to
say that, but then I actually thought, well, probably not actually, because when let's imagine she takes King's Landing riding a dragon, there's probably going to be a lot of petitioners complaining about fill in the blank of the damage that was caused during her taking of King's Landing. So
that is true. Yes.
This is probably a dry run for what's to come.
Right.
Can she find a way to grow her dragons without harming her own followers or the innocents generally?
Well, like I said earlier, they managed to do it in King's Landing, and before that, in the Valyrian Freehold and on Dragonstone for hundreds of years.
Or they just didn't care. I mean, people.
That could be the answer. You just got to harden your heart to these types of things, I guess. But then you got to wonder, are there any of these Meereenese that she can trust?
Yeah. Certainly from my reading, I don't trust any of the people she talked to today. I trust Miss Sandy and Grey Worm and Barristan Selmy and nobody else.
Right. And those are the people she brought with her. So,
right. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you just don't know. I can understand why she would be mistrustful of everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. But can she make progress towards her goals while her dragons grow? One of the things I thought about was Tyrion. Tyrion being advisor to her would be a big step in the right direction for her.
Yes, that's true. And we discussed just last chapter what is Illyrio and Varys's plan for how to use Tyrion. And yeah, if they can manage to get him to Meereen, he might be really helpful.
Yeah.
And but like we talked about, she has a couple options. She could scrap it all and leave for Pentos and Illyrio and let her dragons grow somewhere else.
Yeah.
Righting the wrongs in Slaver's Bay while the dragons grow, that's very noble, and it's a natural thing that a person with a good heart would want to do.
Yeah.
But it's not what she planned on doing when she started out.
Right.
So, it doesn't. She doesn't make it to Westeros, her original plan, if she manages to get herself killed while she's here trying to, straighten everything out in Slaver's Bay.
True enough. All right, next up we have John. So back to the wall. It's been a long time since we've been that cold.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. There's 3 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a 5-star rating and possibly a review. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhall. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest. Or you can make a donation directly to our cause at ghostsofharrenhall.buzzsprout.com.
Well, if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, first off, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes, along with the chapter markers, which are hopefully in the episode. And if you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghosts Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.